Stop trying so hard, right? This is coming from the guy who's like, we do hard things. But I'm telling you, you're trying too hard. It's kind of like someone who's trying to impress somebody, and you're like, come on, it's embarrassing. You're trying too hard, and it's obvious that you're trying too hard. Let me ask you this way. What do you do when your best effort, you're trying, isn't enough? And at some point, you've given your all, you've tried your best, and it wasn't enough. What do you do then? Maybe you slump into defeat. Maybe you get overwhelmingly frustrated and discouraged. Maybe you just want to give up, or you start to allow insecurities to well up within you, especially when you give your best, your all. You try as hard as you can, and only is it not enough, but somebody else makes it look easy. You're struggling and battling in parenting, and you look in at another family and they just make parenting look easy. Maybe it's that way in your marriage or your finances. Maybe in your personal, deep, emotional life. Everyone else seems like they got it all put together, and yet you're in endless turmoil. People look at you and they don't realize that your inner being is a storm. I don't know, I just had that picture of a song from Frozen, a storm welling up within you, but you don't realize that they're just battling inside. Or maybe everyone else seems to be mentally healthy, and yet your mind is racing a mile a minute in turmoil. I've had this personal experience. Now, it was just me, but out on one of my runs recently, I was out running, and to be honest with you, when it started, it was already a little bit nasty. It was raining, the wind was starting to pick up, but I got to this open area where the road just is straight for quite a while, and I'm running, and as I'm running, the wind kicks up really high, and I'm telling you, as I'm running, I feel like I'm going nowhere. The wind is blowing so hard at me that I've got myself bent forward like this, and I'm like, I feel like my feet are in concrete, and like I weigh 3 times more than I do, and I'm just barely moving. I was trying my hardest, but I was getting nowhere. And then something changed. I'll tell you what changed. I got to the end of my run where I turn around. And once I turned the corner and I started going the other direction, suddenly I made it look easy. Because now, instead of running against the wind, I was running with the wind. And instead of having a headwind, I had a tailwind. And now I'm making up time. I'm making it look easy. I'm running faster and better than, frankly, you should run. Now, I was already exhausted from running with the headwind, that even though I had a tailwind, I maybe didn't make up better time, but I was making it look easy. So anybody watching me in the first part of my run would have realized, man, that is really hard. And if I had passed somebody going the other direction, I would have thought, this is really hard, and they're making it look easy. But the difference is the direction. I was running against the wind, then I was running with the wind, and it's possible that in all of your striving and trying and best efforts, what if you're just going the wrong direction? What if you're just aiming your life and your spirit the wrong direction? I think the reality is most of us are trying really hard. We're putting in our best effort, but we're aiming our life and our spirit the wrong way. And as a result, it looks way harder than it has to be. I want to bring you with that into the final week of this message, where we've been going through chapters 7, 8, and 9 of the letter of Romans. The Apostle Paul is this pastor, missionary, church planter, traveling across Asia and Europe to start churches and train pastors to lead those churches, using his business to fund it. He's relocating his headquarters to the capital city of Rome, where he wants to increase his impact. And so he writes this profound letter to the church in Rome to really give them kind of the best of the Christian teaching. He wants them to fully understand the message of Christ. And he doesn't just want to give them right teaching, he wants to show them how to have right living. But you run into this struggle. The struggle is that in chapter 7 and beginning of 8, he's contrasting how you can live in a life in the flesh, in the physical, in your own instincts and nature, compared to living your life in the spirit. Then he shifts gears. And he starts talking about how you can do this, but you can do it driven by religion and trying to follow the rules. Listen to this. I'm going to jump in Romans chapter 8, verse 31, where he gives this kind of like triumphant statement. He goes, what then shall we say in response to these things? In response to what things? In response to, a life lived in the flesh versus a life lived in the spirit, and the reality that you're going to face suffering and you're going to face hardships, you're going to face trials. But he goes, I want you to know that God is for you. He goes, what then shall we say in response to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? If the wind of the Spirit is giving you a tailwind, what can be against you? But then so here's what he does. The rest of this chapter 8, he's saying how that God is not only for you, but the love of Christ is going after you. And there's nothing that can keep you from Jesus. There's nothing that can keep you from God's love. In essence, you can't outrun God's love. But then when you turn the chapter and you get to chapter 9, it's like Paul's triumphant celebration. If God is for you, who can be against you? You can't outrun God's love. There's nothing that can get in the way of God's love. There's nothing on earth and there's nothing in the spiritual realm that can stop God's love for you. And then his face drops and he goes, but some of you are going to miss this. And suddenly he breaks into a contrast between those that were far from God, the Gentiles, the people outside of faith in the one true God, and the Jewish people. And he goes on to explain how his heart breaks for the Jewish people because they missed what is so obvious, that they're bringing their best effort, but they're running against God. And he goes, it's not about your striving, your best effort. It's about knowing and trusting God. It's about faith, not works. And so he wraps this up with these verses. He writes this: the Gentiles who do not pursue righteousness, that's all of us, all the outsiders. He goes, the Gentiles who do not pursue righteousness, meaning they're not trying to do what's right in their own effort. They do not pursue righteousness, have obtained it, a righteousness that is by faith, but the people of Israel who pursued the law as the way of righteousness have not attained their goal. Why not? Because they pursued it not by faith, but as if it were by works. What the Apostle Paul is saying here is this right way of living is not a lack of effort, but misplaced effort. He goes, what the Jewish people were doing, and here's the point, right? He goes, the story of Jesus, the life of Jesus, the message that the Apostle Paul is writing, found its genesis within the nation of Israel, right? Jesus is born a Jew. He comes first to the Jewish people, and the Apostle Paul is saying the reason the Jewish people are missing it is because they're running against grace. Because they think they have to lean in and try harder. And he goes, it's not a matter of a lack of effort. It's a matter of misplaced effort. They're trying to exercise more grit when what they need is to trust God's grip. Hopefully you remember that. Right? They're running against the wind. How? Because of their own efforts. They're trying really hard to do what's right. They're trying to earn their way to God through their own efforts of righteousness rather than trusting by faith God's righteousness that is deposited into their life. And so the key here that should jump off the pages of Paul's writing to the church in Rome in the end of chapter 8 and into chapter 9 is simply this: that you don't try harder, you trust more. Some of you just need me to give you a challenge. Why are you trying so hard? Trying really hard, not just to impress others, but to impress God. The God who sees everything. The God who knows us inside and out. He knows every thought, every detail, every failure, every mistake, every sin. And here we are trying to impress him. And the Apostle Paul is saying that's the trap that the Jewish people got stuck in, is they were striving to earn what can only be received by faith. And some of us, maybe even those of you that grew up in the church, grew up in the Christian faith, but I know it's a temptation for those coming in to faith in Jesus to suddenly start to think, yeah, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Somehow I have to earn what I'm being given. I got to earn my keep. And so we try to pretend like we have it all together. We put on our best face and best appearances, and we start working and striving to be something that on our own we could never be. Here's the deal. No matter how hard you try, and I try, it will never be enough to earn heaven. Why? Because you and I have a spiritual force at work in us, not just tripping us on the run, not just a headwind blowing against us, but literally devastating and destroying us from the inside out, that leaves us defeated before we even start trying. In essence, no amount of trying, no amount of effort, no amount of work will ever earn or deserve what only God can give. So you and I are exhausting ourselves in an impossible effort to try to get our hands on something we could never get. That's religion. Religion is our best effort to earn our way to God, to earn our way to heaven. And let me just tell you, every religion on earth either brings God down to man and says you don't even have to try, or tells you that you have to try really hard to earn your way to God. But God. There's a whole different way. When I read in Romans chapter 8, verse 32, the Apostle Paul says this: "He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things?" What is the Apostle Paul saying? He goes, this is not religion. Here's what God did. God saw our striving. He saw that we were going to try to earn and deserve. He saw the Jewish people, that they were going to try to follow all of the rules and religious laws in their own best effort, but it would never be enough. It'd be like trying to long jump the chasm of the Grand Canyon. It doesn't matter how great of an Olympic long jumper you are. Your best effort may get you a few feet further than me, but it's never going to cross the divide. So what does God do? Paul says that God sees and God saw that our best effort would never work. Our trying harder would never hurdle the divide. And so God came down to us. He lowered himself, not just so we could stop striving, but so that he could take on our battle with our best efforts. Because what causes us to battle with our best efforts and it never be enough? Sin. Sin separates us from relationship with God. It's a spiritual force that doesn't just tie us down and defeat us, but destroys us, separates us from relationship with God, and sets us on a life course or a life leap into ruin and destruction. Eternal judgment. A forever death sentence. And so what does God do? God steps down and becomes one of us, as the Apostle Paul writes, so that he could take on our battle, our struggle, our defeat from sin, pay for the penalty on the cross, absorb our death penalty, our eternal judgment, die in our place. And then Jesus rose from the dead, and in his resurrection, he gives us victory over sin, over death, and over eternal judgment, so that when we believe in Jesus, we are both forgiven and given new and forever life. That's the good news. That's the message. That's the but God does something different. So you and I, we don't have to try harder to run and leap. We just rest in God's arms, and we invite him to carry us, that he bridges the divide. And the only thing we can do is trust him more rather than trying harder. We give up our religion, we give up our best efforts, and we simply put our faith in Jesus and trust God that he's strong enough, he's good enough, and he's got us. Hey, some of you, you've been trying really hard, and you've done an impressive job. Man, you look the part, you've played the part, you've even done church so much better than all the rest of us. But it's not enough. Some of you, because it's not enough, you gave up. Maybe that's why you're joining us online right now. You gave up, but now you're trying to give it a second chance. Some of you, that's why you're a guest, because you gave up, but now you want to give it one more shot. Can I tell you that what you're part of right now is not religion? It's not us trying to impress God, please God, or trying to earn our way to God. It's us having received a gift. It's us not trying harder, but trusting more. Maybe you're finally at a place where you're ready to simply trust God. Can I invite you to say yes to Jesus by faith? You don't earn it, you don't deserve it, you just receive it. And if you're ready to receive this by faith, can I encourage you? Would you say yes to Jesus? Would you let someone know, a friend, a family member, a coworker, and let us know? One of our pastors wants to follow up with you as you begin this new journey in relationship with God. So if you could, scan that QR code, pull out your phone, scan the QR code, fill out the form that's going to bring you to, so that one of our pastors can follow up with you and encourage you as you begin this new journey in relationship with Jesus. And when you begin this journey in relationship with God, it's like turning the corner. You've been trying really hard. You've been trying to impress God or others. You've been putting your best effort into church. You've been running with your shoulder forward, and you're trying to push against the wind. And when you put your faith in Jesus, you turn the corner and you begin to run with a tailwind. Suddenly you discover that God is for you, not against you. That God isn't trying to take your life. He gave his life to give you life. Imagine turning that corner and you begin to feel the wind at your back. Suddenly your pace picks up. Your attitude picks up. You discover that you've been forgiven, that you don't have to constantly repent and say you're sorry. You don't have to carry insecurity. You don't have to carry regret. You don't have to carry shame and guilt. You can just run with the wind. You can run into grace. What the Jewish people were doing was they were running against grace. They were trying to grit it out. And the Apostle Paul is saying, you got to turn it around, turn against religion and start running with relationship with God. The Apostle Paul continues. Let me just go back and read a passage to you, because I think there's some key points here that I want to make sure I unpack so that you don't miss it, because I want to make sure that this is practical and applicable in your life. Who will bring any charge against those whom God has chosen? This is chapter 8, verse 33 and 30 through 35. He goes, who can bring a charge against those whom God has chosen? It's God who justifies. Who then is the one who condemns? No one. Christ Jesus, who died, more than that, who was raised to life, is at the right hand of God and is also interceding for us. Imagine that. Jesus is praying for us. He goes, who then shall separate us from the love of Christ? Wow, that's a mouthful. So here's the key. You don't trust in what you can do, but in what God has already done. Now, I've got to unpack these verses, because you got to understand what God has done so that you can trust him rather than trying harder, right? Don't trust in what you can do. That's the trying harder. But in what God has already done, that's simply trusting God more. What has God done so that you don't have to keep trying? In essence, it's not your best effort, but what Jesus already did. Here it is. Let me go back, and I'm just going to kind of unpack these verses that I read to you. He goes, who will bring any charge against you, against those whom God has chosen? And he goes, who can condemn you? Here's the point. He goes like this. Who can make any accusation against any one of us? And by the way, there's plenty of accusations. I mean, there's things I do. Some people have personally told me after I use an illustration talking about my more aggressive driving than the average Hagerstonian. And they'll say, yeah, Patrick, that's true. Thanks for confessing that. You passed me on the highway. And I kind of embarrassingly go, I'm sorry. See, they're not accusing me. They're just kind of laughing with me, tongue in cheek. I could make other confessions. And so could you. Meaning there's room for accusation. And Jesus, the Apostle Paul is saying, but who can condemn you? Who can attack you if God is your judge and your defense attorney? There's no jury. He is judge and jury and your defense attorney. He is defending you and deciding what the outcome is. And he's already found you not guilty. Not because you weren't guilty, but because Jesus took the blow for you. Because you and I took all of our shame, all of the accusations, and we didn't try harder to earn our way out of it. We didn't try to jump over the judgment. God took all of that judgment of the canyon, he put it on Jesus, paid the price so that now there's a bridge between us and God, and we walk over it, not in our strength, but in Jesus, the work that Jesus already did on the cross. And so what you and I can do is we can stop striving, stop worrying, stop covering it up. Because none of us have outgrown the need for the gospel of Jesus Christ. None of us. I'll need the gospel again tomorrow morning, just like I did this morning. Because there is an accuser who wants to take my shame and my guilt and parade it in front of me and make me try to hide it and cover it up. But the message in the gospel of Jesus is this: who can accuse you if God is for you? Who can condemn you? No one. Why? Because God is for you, not against you. And so now I could say, God, look, I need just a little bit more grace again. God, look, I need just a little bit more mercy. I know you've already absorbed my judgment, but I need forgiveness again. And Paul is championing this with a shout and a declaration. He's going, no one can condemn you. So stop trying to live like you're not guilty, because the only reason why you're not guilty is not because of your best effort or because you can cover it up, but because you've been forgiven by Jesus, who is advocating for you, and not only advocating for you. Then in verse 34, he goes like this: not only this, but Jesus Christ died to pay the penalty for your judgment. He absorbed our death sentence. He absorbed our guilt. He absorbed our eternal judgment. So not only did he die, but he rose from the dead. The message of Jesus, the triumph of Christianity, is the miracle of both the cross and the empty tomb. We have a God who loves us, and he proved it on the cross. And we have a God who's powerful enough to forgive us and give us victory over our broken life because of the empty tomb, because of the power of the resurrection. So he goes, Jesus died, he rose again. Oh, by the way, not only did he rise again, but he ascended back into heaven to be at the right hand of God. Now, this is metaphorical, right? Jesus goes in, and the idea of being at the right hand is being in the position of authority and power and influence. He goes, he ascended, and every day he's interceding for us. Wait, what? That means regularly Jesus is standing in the gap praying for you and me. If Jesus is praying for you, and he's in heaven, the right hand of the Father, you're going to be okay. You don't have to keep trying. You don't even have to pray that good. I'm not saying don't pray. I'm just saying you don't even have to pray that good. Jesus will turn that prayer into something that sounds awesome and that actually gets an answer. You see what I'm saying? Here's the deal. It's not our best effort. It's what Jesus has already done for us. And so we trust rather than try harder. Verse 35, he says, so what can separate us from the love of Christ? He's making a triumphant declaration. He goes, come on. God is for you, not against you, and nothing can get in the way of God's love. It doesn't matter how hard you run against God. God's love and grace will outrun your sin and your guilt and your shame. He is pursuing you and he loves you and he will chase you down, overtake you, forgive you, and wrap you in his love. And there's nothing either on earth or in the spiritual realm that can keep you from the love of Jesus. That's what he goes on to say. He goes, there's no sickness, there's no disease, there's no death, there's no battle, there's no disappointment, there's no bankruptcy that can keep you from the love of Jesus. There are no demons or angels. There are no principalities in the spiritual realm that can keep you from the love of God that is found in Christ Jesus. In fact, he says it this way. Let me just read a little bit more. He goes, what shall separate you from the love of Christ? Shall trouble or hardship, persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? As it is written, for your sake we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to the slaughter. No, in all of these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. You are more than a conqueror. This is an unbelievable statement. The Apostle Paul is like, you don't just win. And you don't just conquer. Like, you get an overwhelming, blow the team out of the water victory. You shame the opponent through the love of Jesus. See, victory isn't the result of running, but remaining. And look, I'm a runner. And when I don't feel good, I go for a run. When I'm frustrated, I run further. In fact, you can generally tell how stressed I am by how far I run. If I feel sick, you know what I think the answer is? Run it out. But you don't run when it comes to faith. When it comes to trusting, you remain. He's saying you remain in the love of Jesus. And when you remain in God's forgiveness and love and grace, you stop performing and you start trusting. You aim your attention toward God rather than turning your back to God. See, it's about remaining and abiding and trusting in God's love, his forgiveness, his goodness, and his grace to overtake you, to wash you, to forgive you, and to make you. And so let me give kind of a final thought on this. I want to make sure that you hear this. You are not barely surviving when you believe in Jesus by faith. You are more than a conqueror. You are overcoming. It doesn't matter what you feel, because this is in the spiritual realm. The feeling is in the physical, but in the spiritual realm, God sees you as more than a conqueror, more than an overcomer. You are not defeated and you're not barely holding on. God is for you and he is carrying you into victory. Go back to what the Apostle Paul said. I read it to you already. Let me just kind of capture it again. I want to catch a few of these phrases in Romans chapter 9, verse 30 through 32. The Gentiles, and he goes on to say, who, by the way, didn't even bother trying to be good enough. They obtained righteousness that is by faith. Did you catch it? They were seen as living right, not because they tried harder, but because they trusted more. Obtain righteousness that is by faith. But where did Israel get it wrong? Well, here's where Israel got it wrong. But the people of Israel, they did not obtain it. Why? Because they were trying to do it in their own best efforts. They did not obtain righteousness because they pursued it not by faith, but as if it were by works. They were aiming themselves and their posture of religion against the wind of the Spirit, against grace, against faith, and they tried harder. Let me be clear. Grace begins where your effort ends. In essence, if you're still trying, you don't get it. God's grace will meet me when I discover that I can't. When I stop with my best effort, at that place is where I discover grace. Some of you, you're just not worn out enough yet. Some of you, you haven't exhausted your best efforts yet. You haven't gotten to the end of yourself yet, enough to trust God. But I can assure you that God's grace meets you where your effort ends. And God's grace will overtake you and lift you and carry you. Can I challenge you that your best efforts will miss God's grace every time? But if you will trust and yield and say, God, I need you. God, I don't want to do this on my own. I give you my life. I give you my effort. I'm going to stop trying to earn it or deserve it. God, I yield to you. This is the better way. Can I challenge you right now? Maybe your prayer right now is a simple whisper prayer. Help me to stop trying and trust more. I want to trust more rather than try harder. It's a whisper prayer. Would you make that your prayer? Not just right now, but this week when you get caught in moments and situations where you're tempted to try harder, to earn or deserve or look a certain way, remember that you will never outgrow your need for the gospel, for forgiveness and mercy and grace. So the only thing you can do is throw yourself into trusting God more. Would you make that your prayer? God, help me to trust you more rather than trying harder.